And you thought these were just for wearing around your waist, huh? Well, lucky for you, I'm about to completely whip my belt collection into the next style dimension. So strap yourself in, sis, because we are going for a serious ride with this humble little accessory. Oh, and P.S., it's not just belts that we're going to reimagine. We're also going to do some belt sorcery with chains, ribbons, scarves, ties, charms, corsets, even the bottom of jackets. Hey friends, lovers and thrifty fiends, my name is Faye and we talk all things secondhand, sustainable, vintage, op shopping, or what I like to call op shopulence. So we take secondhand, we get super crafty and creative, and we reimagine it into first class chic. And we do this because it's much better for people and the planet. And when you shop at a thrift store or an op shop or a charity shop, wherever you may be in the world, you are supporting communities, helping people who are doing it tough. For me, that's the kind of fashion that I want to support, fashion that can really be a force for change. And it's up to us as consumers to remember that we have that power. The more that we choose fashion that is much better for people and the planet, the more I think the industry has to change. And here on this channel, I really love to get your brains ticking and to make you think differently about the things that you can find in thrift stores or what you may have in your closet. All right, belt reinvention class is in session. So let's keep it short, chic, and not too expensive. And let's dive into my first idea for reimagining belts. So I'm obsessed with belts. I have quite a big collection. I wear them all the time. They are amazing for reinventing an outfit. They cinch the smallest part of me. They show off my curves. And I always look for them in thrift stores. I'm always looking for unique ones, for vintage ones. But what I really love to do is to think really differently about them. Okay, let's talk about the belt harness. This idea first came to me when I saw Tracee Ellis Ross accepting her Style Icon Award in Alexander McQueen, and she had this incredible harness on over what looked like a lot of white men's shirts. Obviously, it was a McQueen dress, but it really got my brain ticking. It made me think, look at the power of these classic pieces, white collared shirts and belts. And I thought, okay, well, I don't have a harness, but why can't I make a harness out of belts? So the simplest thing to do, and you can do so many different combinations with the belt harness idea, but the beginner level is literally 3 or 4 belts. So what I've done here is I've decided to put 2 around my waist. And so that's your kind of anchor, right? And then you use 2 other belts almost as like braces or suspenders. And then you just tuck those belts into the belts around your waist. And I've done it so that the buckles are at the front because I think that looks really nice aesthetically. And then you just pull it into place where you're comfortable. And hello, belt harness. So this is why I'm always on the lookout when I'm in thrift stores for great belts, particularly in the men's section. I look for the longer ones because you have more to play with. So this is probably my favorite belt. And I know that's a tough call because I love all of them, but this is a beautiful black leather, like $2 or $3 in the men's section. You've got all of the insignia there, all the details of it. It's really soft. I can really play around with it. And another way that I wear this simply is just with my belt loop hack. So you can see what I'm doing here. It's when you've got all of this extra length, you really can just play around with it, pull it up and then put it through that little loop, and it creates this really nice polished look to a belt accessory and to your outfit. I think it looks a little bit more elevated, it looks more high fashion, and you see a lot of designers doing this kind of idea with belts. Vivienne Westwood's done it, Alexander McQueen. Then you've got the classic off-white belt that everybody had for a while, and that was extra long as well. So having that extra length is really great. And then this is something else that I do. Where I can, I find a bootmaker who can add my initials. So it just gives it that little custom touch. And then, of course, the other thing that you can do is when you've got all of this extra length and all of these extra little belt holes, you can fill these up with brooches and it looks super chic. I have had some brooch belts for sale before on my Upcycling store, and they always go pretty quick because it's hard to find good quality long leather belts, and it's becoming a bit harder to find brooches as well. But so a blank canvas belt like this is fantastic because you really can play around with charms and trinkets like brooches and then doing your customizing as well. The other belt harness idea that I did, this was for Fashion Week, was I just played around with different configurations. So I've got this classic beige caramel blazer on, and then I just sort of went bananas with the placement, and I encourage you to do this as well. So have your anchor around your waist and then think about how else could I place these belts to create a really unique, one-of-a-kind harness effect. And I love that you can tell it's belts because I think that looks so cool. It speaks to our thrifty mindset and the quirk and irreverence and one-of-a-kind cool that you have when you're rocking a thrifted fit. And I've always created lots of conversations by wearing these belt harnesses. Ribbons as belts. So starting really simply, I think the concept of a light or contrasting colored jacket, in my case, I've used this white blazer that I've customized with lots of different quotes on it. But I love the stark contrast of the black against the white and then using the black ribbon just simply tied around my waist. I think it pops so well. It would also look great on a beige blazer or a yellow blazer. Or if you've got a black blazer, try a beautiful neon green ribbon or gold. For this effect, I would totally just hit my local craft store. You can buy rolls of ribbon that are very inexpensive. I always go for the satin or the velvet because I think that looks really beautiful and elevated. And I just did a fashion parade recently for International Women's Day, and the colors were purple, green, pink, and blue. And so with one of the outfits in particular, Val was wearing a purple Ralph Lauren shirt and she had green pants on. So I contrasted it with this beautiful purple satin ribbon around her waist. I have the tie going pretty much all the way down almost to the ankle because I think that just looks really elegant and dramatic, and it's more of a statement. But if you don't have ribbon and you want to try use something that you've already got in your wardrobe, have a look on your jackets, your robes, your kimonos, and is there a belt on there? One of my favorite belts that I use quite often as a choker piece as well is from one of my kimonos. So lately I've been wearing it around my neck, tied in a bow at the back with the long ribbon hanging down, but it's also absolutely perfect for doing the ribbon belt idea around a jacket. And have a look in thrift stores as well in their haberdashery or like Manchester section, because quite often you can find ribbon in there. You can find little trims and things in there that maybe could be used to create a belt. The simple statement of satin or velvet ribbon looks chef's kiss. One of the things I saw on my Pinterest board was these ribbon harnesses. How gorgeous. So I was thinking, how could I do this? So what if I did the same sort of idea that I did with the belts, but so I did the belts over here as like the suspenders, and then I could do the ribbon around my waist, or use a belt like this chain belt that I've got and almost kind of like thread the ribbon through the little rings of that to give that effect. I think I probably, if I want it to look more like this one, I think I need to get a much longer piece of ribbon, but I really love that contrast of the more kind of hard edged leather with the more almost like ballerina like bow. I think dichotomy in fashion is so attractive and so alluring, particularly when you're teaming like something more masculine presenting with something more feminine. And I think this leather and ribbon idea just looks so good. And a lot of the bases for these, I think, that really make it pop is a classic white shirt. You could also do a bodysuit, or you could just do like a fitted kind of turtleneck like this. I think whatever is going to really make the belts and the concept of the harness stand out. Ties as belts. Genius, easy. It gives such a dynamic statement. It really highlights the waist. And I love that you can play with different prints, different colors, and you can contrast it. Now, I saw this idea on Benjola's Instagram. If you're not following her, she's amazing. She has so many ideas, and she took my brooch necklace idea and ran with it and has loved it and has been repping that. So shout out to you, Benjola, for being such a thrifty sister. I love your ideas. I'm glad you love mine. So what Benjola did with her ties, she had some grandpa ties, so like the thicker ties. If you can find them, awesome. But all she did was just pin the two ends together. She just used a safety pin hidden underneath. And then you've got this extra long tie, scarf, belt situation to wrap around, and then you get that natural obi effect. Because at the moment I don't know how to sew, so I'm all about a quick fix, and I'm all about how can I do this easily, simply, with a no sew vibe. So I absolutely loved this. I've gone for black and white, so I've pinned these two together to create that really nice effect, but you could also do it with some bold color, like these beautiful hand painted scarves that I found. They are absolutely gorgeous, and I love the idea of it contrasted with another print. Ties are so inexpensive in thrift stores, and they're really easy to play around with. If you do know how to sew, then you could use a whole row of ties and create a longer line belt. See, again, it's not just about a traditional belt. You know, you've got to see clothes in a different way. And this is what thrifting has taught me. And this is what my book Upcycling is all about. Yes, it's a tie, but why does it have to be worn as a tie? Why can't it be a belt? Yes, it's a belt, but why does it have to be worn as a belt? Why can't we reimagine it? Why can't we completely flip these pieces on their head? And that's how you save money, and that's how you get great personal style. So I really love this idea of the obi belt. I also saw this cool idea using just a simple bangle and adding the tie, two ties, so one tie through that way and another tie through that way, to create this really nice bangle sort of circular effect in the front. And you could do this with scarves as well. So just running the scarf either side through that bangle, and then you've got this really interesting circular detail in the front. I think it looks amazing, and it looks like a belt, but it's literally a bangle and a scarf, or a bangle and a tie. So simple, but so clever and super striking. See, belts, but not as we know it. Scarves as belts. So obviously you could do the traditional through the belt loop and then just tie it like that, very sort of Jane Birkin vibes, which I think looks gorgeous. But the ones that I saw when I was in the deep, dark void of Pinterest exploration last night was I really liked how it was a much thicker, bolder statement. So almost tied, covering the majority of the torso over the white shirt. Again, I think it looks gorgeous. So that's what I did with my Hermes scarf that I found for $5. I talked about that in my top 10 thrift finds video that I did recently. So if you haven't seen that, I'll link it below and you can check it out. And again, it's just really making me think of belts in a completely different way. It really doesn't just have to be that standard piece of leather with a buckle. You know, I think a scarf is a great way to add waist detail to an outfit. It also looks fantastic over a jacket. And you see this kind of idea a lot on the runways. Burberry does this a lot. And I'm seeing this pop up more and more with street style as well. Scarves are such an easy one to find in thrift stores as well. There's so many beautiful prints and colors and textures that you can find. I always gravitate towards looking for silk ones and the more sort of vintage aesthetics. What scarves have you got, and how could you play around with that beautiful waist detail over a dress, over a jacket, over a shirt? I think it's such a bold statement, and again, it's really highlighting the feminine form, but it's also not too cinched. So if you're not a massive belt fan, or you're not a massive like waist cincher person, I think this is more of a relaxed, subtle way to give definition to an outfit and to give definition to your form. Also kind of hides your tummy a little bit if that's a concern for you. So that's why I love this idea of belts, but not as we know it, because it doesn't have to be in the traditional way. So I like to layer my belts as well. So I will play around with different sizes. So I really love this beautiful custom leather piece that I have. It's like a more of an obi style belt. So because it's so thick, I really like to play around with adding another belt to it. So I'll put my beloved Moschino belt over the top. I love putting like 3 or 4, 5, maybe even 6 belts on top of each other. I think that looks amazing as well, particularly if it's, you know, kind of almost coming up to like bust level. So it does look like a corset. It's like a belt corset. I think that looks so fun and interesting, like to play around with different belt thicknesses, belt colors, belt textures. Before I did this video, I went through all the belts that I had and I laid them out on my bed. I was first of all surprised by how many I had. I didn't realize I had that many, but I used them all, and they all can be reused and reimagined in so many different configurations. Thrifting has taught me so much, and I think one of the things that I love the most about what it's really tapped me into is my creative brain. Trying to walk the talk of not always buying new has really forced me in a great way to rethink when I'm customizing or DIYing things and there's bits and pieces left over. What can I do with that? What could that become? I don't want to discard of that, and I don't want to just slice a garment only to use half of it. So when I started cropping jackets, I was obviously faced with the bottom half of the jacket, right? And I initially was like, what should I do with that? And then it just kind of came to me that, well, why couldn't it be like a peplum belt or like a corset belt? So it started to become a feature for me. So I would cut them in half on purpose so that I could now have this 2-piece set. So this gold 2-piece set is one of my favorites. It was a jacket that I found on the $2 rack, and I've shown you this before, but it's such a great example of the kind of mindset that you develop the more that you get into this thrifty world, this opulence way of thinking. So I sliced it up, and then I painted I painted it gold first, and then I sliced it up. And I wear this all the time, and I love the bottom part of the jacket as a corset belt or as like a peplum belt, and it goes over so many things. Like, it looks fantastic over a black dress. I can wear it over denim. So when you are customizing, like, really think about all the scraps and what they could become, because they can look really elevated and beautiful too. And then what was interesting was that as I started to do this, I started to see it in fashion as well. So there was a couple of brands that I noticed that were actually selling these 2-piece sets, but the bottom half of the blazer was a skirt. So I love that idea as well, of like a mini skirt, but I would wear it over pants, like this kind of idea. I love that idea, how it just sits on the hips, and it's such a cool contrast with that suiting, with the tailoring vibe. You can just have it sitting over the pants like that, or you can cinch it with a belt. So then you get more of that paper bag waist effect again, which is adding that belt concept and that waist detail to an outfit. And this piece is another example of how you could really tap into artistry, artisan culture, and in my case, Indigenous culture. So my beautiful First Nations friend Paul McCann hand painted this. So again, we sliced a jacket in half and he painted the top part with one of his dreaming, with one of his mob story. And then he painted the bottom bit as well. So I can wear these as separate pieces, and they've become these really beautiful peplum corset belt. I don't even know what to call them, but for me, I do look at them as another way to create a belt. Another super thinking outside the box belt concept is corsets. So I love them for their waist cinching detail. And what I like to do with them is mess around with the pieces that I find in the lingerie section, in the sleepwear section, in thrift stores. So with this piece that I'm wearing, it was a bustier, but the actual bra cups were sort of, they were a bit like old and haggard and they just didn't look very nice anymore. So I literally cut them out and created a cupless, I don't know if that's the right word, but a cupless corset or like waist detail. And so this can slot over anything. And I really like the contrast of it over a rock t-shirt. I think that looks super fun and interesting, that whole dichotomy again of something that's more masculine or just more casual with this very feminine, not meant to be seen outside of the house or the bedroom. I'm like, no, screw that. It's thinking about, okay, it's not a traditional belt, but it's still giving me the idea of what a belt does, which is to cinch, to add detail, to really show off the waist. And I have other corset belts that I have created from shirts. So this white one I've shown you recently was part of a shirt that I found on the $2 rack, and the whole top of it was a bit bunged up. So we cut that off and we saved the bottom, added the shoelacing to it. And then I've got this really great cotton corset that is so malleable and that works over so many different things. Love seeing the little straps hanging down, particularly if you're contrasting it over something like leather or denim or cargo pants. And quite often corsets that I've found, like this silver sequin one that I love, that I've worn a lot, I don't always wear it as a corset, like over my bust. I do wear it more like a belt, and I'll wear it like an asymmetrical belt. The lacing might be, going at the back, but I will put it at the side, or I'll put it at the front, or I'll wear it like on an angle. I get all these ideas because the more I educate myself about high fashion, I'm looking at runway shows all the time. I'm looking at designers like Hayder Ackerman. I love his aesthetic. It was his layering that kind of made me think, well, why can't I wear it in an unexpected way to create this just incredible wow factor belt moment. I also really like the idea of using garter belts or like suspender belts and kind of reimagining them. So I have this beautiful Pleasure State suspender belt, and it's got the little thigh bits as well. So I took them off, and then again, you've got this kind of really interesting lingerie aspect. But then when you put it over something more casual like a t-shirt, it just adds this very interesting texture and contrast. The other thing I want to do is get myself a couple of pairs of jeans from the discount rack, cutting the waistband off the jeans and having the pockets still on there, and then embellishing them with some chains, some pearls, brooches, whatever it may be. I love this idea of turning the top part of the jeans into a belt or like a corset belt. The other thing I do is little girls' tutus. So little girls' tutus create a great high fashion recreation. So Alexander McQueen will forever be one of my favorite houses, and I love how they always have peplum detail, they have tulle, they have leather, but there's always this really great sort of mini, they do harnesses a lot as well, but they have this really beautiful feminine kind of idea on a suit. And so little girls' tutus are perfect for that because they give that little kick, and they only cost a few dollars. So I've got quite a few of them in my wardrobe, and they for me are another form of a belt. If I want to add more detail, I'll put a belt over the top of the little tutu, but again, it's just something really different. And I love that. And for the occasion, I got super excited and created an epic Pinterest board. So there are lots of ideas and inspiration on that board for you to have a look at. I'll link it down below. So you can join over there and check out my belt hack Pinterest board. There's so many good ideas on there, and I'm already musing about some other things that I can do. This is the thing, it's like you don't just have to wear a traditional belt. Thanks to you, my gorgeous subscribers, I now know about the châtelaines. So the châtelaine is this Victorian piece, and it's basically like a belt accessory, a giant charm, or almost like a brooch. I believe it hooked over the belt, but it was for the lady of the house or a dressmaker, the lady who kind of had, you know, the keys to the house or to the castle. But it was used a lot by dressmakers to have all of their, it's kind of like the first tool belt, I guess. So on the châtelaine, they would have their dressmaking scissors, they would have a tape measure, they would have cotton in a little box, they would have their thimble. One of you lovely ladies mentioned this in a comment, and so of course I went Googling. And then shortly after, the Dior show from the men's 2025 collections, it featured a châtelaine. It just blew my head apart because I love brooches, I love trinkets. So with the châtelaine in mind, I went to this belt, which has some links, it has chain. And so I thought, well, maybe I can create my own kind of version of the châtelaine. And I've added some trinkets, I've added a few charms and things to give it that feel. I am now on the lookout for an actual châtelaine. I've no idea how much the Dior one is. I mean, imagine having that, how divine. I've actually seen a few original Victorian ones on Etsy, so I'm keeping my eye out. But for now, I just really like the idea of creating something inspired by that and adding charms and trinkets or brooches that I relate to. And I think this is another great way of telling your style story. I've got these two great gold chains that I quite often clip on a handbag, but then it also made me think, well, I could clip them on the side of the belt to create another sort of almost châtelaine effect. But it also takes me to like 80s, 90s hip hop as well, in a different way, with the chains in the baggy jeans, you know? So again, it's like adding these different belt details that are not quite belts, but it just really takes an outfit from like basic to like wow. Something else that got my brain ticking was for people who maybe are not into belts as much as I am, is just adding some subtle detail to the waist. So looking at a collared shirt or an oversized t-shirt and just taking a little part of it and just folding it and adding a brooch. So you've just got this tiny little side detail that adds some texture, it adds some dimension to an outfit, but it's not super cinched if you're not a big fan of showing that part of yourself. But I think that little touch, particularly with a brooch, just adds a bit more interest to an outfit and definitely a bit more definition. You could do that with a safety pin as well, or the safety pins that you can find with little pearls on them, just adding that. Oh, and one more idea. Back of a blazer or the front of a t-shirt even, get yourself some safety pins and line them up on the front or the back or the middle part of the garment, and then just use ribbon or a shoelace and thread it through that little part of the safety pin where the hole is. And then you create this corset effect in the middle of the garment. So I love that. Again, have a look on my Pinterest board, and I think there's a DIY on there that you can check out. So easy. 6 safety pins and a bit of ribbon or even string, whatever you've got, and then you create this faux corset effect in your midsection. Looks amazing. Well, I think we have successfully cooked the belts, but not as we know it concept. I hope this was inspiring for you. I hope it's got your brain ticking. Lots of cool things that you can do with belts for sure, but other ways that you can make belts. Dive into your belt collection, see what you've got, and when you are thrifting, always keep an eye out for unique belts. Look in the lingerie section for things that you could turn into belts. Look on your jackets. Is there a belt on that you could use, that you could play around with? Could you create a harness with the belts that you've got? My goodness, so many ideas. Hope this was helpful, and I hope it makes you slow down and think about how you can be creative with what you've already got or what we can find secondhand. And lastly, I'm really going after this, but you can also wear chain belts as chokers. Case in point, I've just wrapped it around twice, done it up on the side, hung it down the front so you can see this is a vintage Paloma Picasso belt. So I've got the little branding there. How could you reinvent belts into a completely new style dimension? I'll leave it with you. Okay, mic drop. And I will see you really soon for the next one. Bye.